All right, good evening, everyone. I think we are on. This is our agenda review meeting in preparation for our commission meeting on Thursday evening.
All right, good evening, everyone. I think we are on.
Sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
got that cleared up. All right. So our agenda for Thursday night's rather short. I guess there's not a lot of business going on. Is there, Mr. Peterson? If you let's just do the agenda part first. And then there may be a couple other topics we want to get an update on. I'll turn it over to you. You're on mute, Pete.
How's that? Better?
Yep. Better.
Yeah.
Okay. As the mayor pointed out, with the stay-at-home orders in place, the activity across the community has slowed down some. What you have on your meeting this coming Thursday night will be consideration of the minutes from your regular meeting and a special called meeting. There will be a presentation of a proclamation recognizing Crime Victims' Rights Week. And on the consent agenda, we have a work order for TCI to do design, specification development, and construction inspection contract administration for the recoating of the Master's Knob storage tank. That's the tank that sits out behind AAA signs and on the other side of the hill from Woodstone. That tank has been recoated in a couple of decades, and its time has come due. So we'll this is the first step in that, in getting the specs and everything put together. Then we'll have it coated. There is an amendment to your 3-year TDOT consolidated planning grant contract. There's some monies being reallocated that's being made available to us. So what we're asking there is that you approve a new contract, or an amendment to the existing contract rather, which would make additional monies available to us. There is a match, local funding match required with that. This year's local match is already included in the budget. And of course, we would budget that amount in the upcoming year's budget as well.
Pete, could you real quickly, could you review on the MPTO? That's Johnson City, but it's also outside of the Johnson City area that it covers as well, correct?
That's correct. It covers the entirety of Washington County, up as far as Bluff City into Sullivan County, and over into Carter County up to about Stony Creek Highway. And then over in Unicoi, it goes up to the town of Unicoi.
So are these the shared, our local share, the $271,000? Is that just Johnson City's share of getting these funds, or the other entities also participating in that share?
No, these are solely Johnson City dollars. There's really very little work that goes on outside of the Johnson City boundary. There's some up in Carter County. Johnson City being the largest entity in the planning district, or the MTPO, the largest entity is usually always the host agency that does all the staff support and those types of things. What these are, this particular funding is planning grants. So this will be used for instance, we're going to do a major thoroughfare plan for the city, and that's part of these monies is obligated to do that. That will be a part of what these expenditures will be for.
Okay. Because I mean, I sit on that board, and I know we approve a number of projects that are outside of Johnson City. So just wondering how the cost share went.
When we do construction projects beyond the city, the receiving entity has to come up with 100% of the local match. So if we do a signal in Elizabethton, for example, then Elizabethton will have to come up with 100% of the local match. These planning grant dollars are really the only ones that, I think those would be the only ones that other entities would get some benefit of the work being done without having to put any money into it.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Your next item is a pole attachment agreement with Bright Ridge. We have, I think, 288 pole attachments on Bright Ridge poles. Those attachment fees are $36 per year per pole. The annual cost this year would be $10,368. The attachments that we have are fiber attachments where we're interconnecting signals at intersections. So there's not a lot of these, but when TVA and Bright Ridge did their most recent audit, it was determined that we did have those 288 attachments that we needed to pay for. So that's what this will be.
Is that a new expense or an increased expense, or I didn't see anything as to what it used to be compared to now?
It's a new expense. We have never been charged a pole attachment to this point. Rightfully so, we should have probably been charged pole attachments several years whenever we started attaching to the poles. I think that I'm not sure how frequently Bright Ridge does audits, but with the tens of thousands of poles that they've got, I'm sure that there are probably other attachments on some of their poles that they're not current with as well.
Yeah, and I'll just comment on that. We just, completed the audit, and any telecommunications or anybody that attaches to the pole pays these pole attachments. And with small cell coming upon us, that's going to be a big issue with attaching to poles because of just the added weight and tension on the poles. So this is getting a lot of airtime right now because the 5G lobby groups are trying to get the pole attachments as little as possible to none. So that's what's kind of brought all this about, that we need to do the audit and get everybody, on the same page.
Yes, ma'am.
And by the way, Bright Ridge owns most of the poles in our area, with the exception of CenturyLink, who owns the remainder of them. So if Bright Ridge attaches to a CenturyLink pole, we have to pay CenturyLink that pole attachment as well.
We own very, very few poles in the city. We have some poles at intersections for traffic signals, those types of things. Bright Ridge owns some of the poles in our parks and provides lighting in the parks. Some of the other parks, then we own the poles and the lighting. We're just not equipped to maintain and maintenance those poles and the lights on them. And it's just proven to be a good relationship with Bright Ridge, and to be cost effective for us to go ahead and pay them an annual fee to maintain the poles and the street lights and all those types of things. And a lot of our fiber is underground, but there are some locations that it just wasn't cost effective or feasible to run it underground, thus these 288 attachments on the Bright Ridge poles.
Pete or Mayor, is this a fee that there are guidelines as to what helps them determine what their fee is that they're going to charge, or
Right.
charge whatever you want?
Without telling you how to make a watch, the pole is divided up from 100%, down the pole to see what portion the different entities use. And of course, all the electric goes on the very top of the pole. There has to be a 4-foot gap, and then telecommunication attaches below that. So it's based on a percentage and heavily regulated by TVA. So we just can't make up a number. So we're right in line with the same charges that other distributors charge.
Okay. Next item is a mowing contract and litter collection. This would be mowing along I-26.
Pete,
This is, yes.
are we going to go through each individual item like this? I mean, like most of what was on here was stuff I didn't have questions about. So we may not need to talk about tonight. If 72 hours from now, we're going to talk about it again.
Well,
Let's just see if anybody has any
Okay.
questions.
sure. So are there any questions on the consent agenda?
The only question I had was on the third reading. I didn't see plan of services for the stewardship annex. There was the annex, the switching to B4, and then we didn't have a third part on this one.
The plan of services only needs to be approved on one reading. So
But we
we
did-
have addressed that. Yes, sir.
Okay, we did it on 2, but we don't have to do it on 3 for sure.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
And the ordinance that Commissioner Fowler is referring to, obviously, is the stewardship annexation that is out on Bobby Hicks Highway, is on your agenda for third and final reading. So we would, are there any questions about that? All right, seeing none, that gets us down to other business.
Pete, just one before we go there, the 5.3.1, the software support and hardware maintenance
Yes,
renewal,
sir.
that 9.2% increase, was that expected? Was it in the contract? It just seems with this day and time, a 9.2% increase is pretty considerable.
It is, and that's what we had budgeted for this year. Yes, sir.
Okay. So that was part of the original contract, that there would be a 9.2% increase at this time?
I need to check and see if that was the original contract. In the contract, there is an allowance for an increase on an annual basis. And I'll need to follow up on that, Commissioner, and make sure that where that stood in the original contract, because I don't have the original contract in front of me. But I will get into that and get you an answer.
Okay, I guess my question is that negotiable? Is that, because 9.2% increase on anything right now is pretty considerable.
Yes, sir,
Just
it
a thought.
is.
Was there any incremental services being provided on why it went up, or is it for the exact same service?
It's for the same service. And this particular software is what we use to do finance, purchasing, payroll, HR, inventory, utility billing, budget, accounts receivable and payables. I mean, this is pretty much our core software that we use to access the majority of our work. But let me get some answers from Lisa, and I will get that out to you before the meeting on Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Okay, we were going to have an update. Let Pete give us an update. If you want to stay on the line, if you need to hop off, that's fine too.
Do you all want to talk about the murals?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Sorry about that. I missed
Okay.
that one.
The first one is, and there's in your packet is a rendering of what that would look like. This would go on the wall on the west, what I'm gonna call the west end, the Wild Wings, or the building, the end of the building closest to their parking lot. This is a mural that is being recommended by the Public Art Committee. And this is funded with non-city funds.
Pete, can I
Yes,
ask, where are the boundaries of the downtown historic district? Are either of these, I feel confident Summers is outside of that boundary, but is Wild Wings in or out of the historic district?
It is out, as I understand it, the historic district going west ends at Buffalo Street.
Okay. Well, I think that's true, except I think the stuff on Commerce Street got swept in on the other side of the railroad tracks.
Okay, I'll double check.
And
on
that's
that-
where
on
I
that.
wasn't sure where the boundary actually ended.
Do you know
Yes,
how
sir.
much they are paying for that mural? Because that guy's a fairly famous guy, but it looks pretty good to me.
I do not, sir.
Who's paying for it if it's not city funds? Just
It's the Public Art Committee. They do fundraisers, and when they sell off the pieces that are here on display for a couple of years, whatever proceeds that they generate from the sale of those art pieces goes into a fund for them to continue doing business.
it's an impressive looking mural,
Yes.
and the guy's resume is outstanding as well. But I think the description of what the meaning behind it is very fitting in our current time.
Todd, a little bit more on your question. They have a range of what they pay per square foot for the murals, for the artist's design, and then to actually install it. So that's what they work within kind of this framework.
So it's like buying carpet.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, well, if you've been to Austin, Texas, he's got probably 10 different murals in Austin, and they are really, really nice. So that guy coming here is, I think it will be a big deal for Johnson City.
Is this on the side facing Founders, or is
Yes,
it?
sir.
Okay, great. That's awesome.
Okay, and the next item on your agenda is approval for the placement of a mural on a wall at Summers Hardware. In your packet is a rendering of what the suffrage mural will look like. And it's actually on a wall that will face directly towards the Ash Street Post Office Courthouse. Again, that is not in the historic district, and it is being paid for by funds other than city general funds.
So it's parallel to State of Franklin on
But you
the
can't-
other side of the building.
Right.
Correct.
Pete, is there an estimated time that these projects will get started, and how long they'll take?
I will need to ask Commissioner. I'm not sure.
I was just curious.
I think the one on the suffrage, I know a little bit more about. They want to get started as soon as possible, as soon as we're open and they can bring the folks in to do it. I don't know about the other one. I would imagine probably the same. If all the funding's in place and the designs are in place, then I think they'll be ready to go.
Yes, that's my
And
understanding.
Summers has given the okay to place this last mural on this wall.
And Joe Baker has given permission to put the one on the side of the Wild Wings building as well. So that'll be some nice additions to the downtown. And that takes you to the end of your agenda for Thursday night.
Okay, are there any other questions about the agenda?
Just in reference to some of the letters we're getting from some of the businesses as to their staffing, is that something that we should be seeing other businesses consider, or is this something that really is more standard practice outside of a pandemic that's not necessarily required as far as notifying us?
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about now. That's a state requirement. Anytime a business lays off, I don't remember the number, Commissioner, but over a certain threshold of employees, then they're required to notify the state of Tennessee as well as the local government having jurisdiction. So we did send along a couple of those to you all that we had received in the mail. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Hopefully we don't see a lot of those, but
No,
I'm afraid we're going to see a few. Any other questions about the agenda?
Will we be getting a full construction report, or is that for our viewing on Thursday night?
We can,
We don't need to go over it tonight if we're going to go over it on Thursday night. I was just curious how that would play.
at this
Would you
time,
like-
to be honest, I had not planned on it, but if you'd like to have one, I can certainly get that put together for Thursday. That wouldn't be any problem.
Whatever.
Are there any particular projects you're interested in?
No, I was just curious more about how Thursday night would go.
Yeah.
If that was going to be.
We might want to just get an update on the legacy project, how that's going, maybe Thursday.
Okay. We will do that. Yes, sir.
Pete, could you also, if you have time to do it, if not at the next meeting, just an update on Buffalo Valley? I actually got a call on that today.
Let me guess,
Somebody
that's something to
want-
do with water.
No, somebody wanting to buy the golf course. So I wonder what we're doing. So where the Corps of Engineers are on it, when we'll know about that. I'll pass along the information to you.
Okay. Well, in fact, Phil and I talked about that the other day. The design folks in the Corps are still trying to get the final construction documents finalized that would put us in a place to begin that work, hopefully sometime next fall. And so it's moving. Is it moving as quickly as we would like? No, it really isn't. But we're kind of at the mercy of the federal government trying to get the approval of the Corps of Engineers. And I'm sure that they've probably got their hands full, especially this week. But that project has got a really nice return on investment to it. We were looking at next year's budget the other day and trying to determine what projects made sense to spend money on. And with the way that project works out, we can recoup the cost of the construction in year one by selling the credits. So that is one of the projects that we do want to recommend keeping alive and get that construction project done over the course of this fall and winter, because those credits will have a return on investment of about 4 to 1. So it's really a nice ROI. If you'll recall, we can only sell off 20% of the credits in any given year. So it will take 5 years to sell the credits. But the way it looks right now, the dollar value of the credits is going to be somewhere between $1 million and $2 million, hopefully closer to the $2 million. So it'll be a good project. And it really doesn't impact the property all that much. It'll be contained within 50 feet either side of the creek banks now, and the rest of the property is basically undisturbed.
Okay.
With the high winds and some heavy rains last night, is there any update or anything with that impacted the city?
Yes, sir. Give me just a second here. We had quite a bit of water last night. There was pretty significant flooding at State of Franklin and Watauga, Austin Springs Road, down on Maupin Row, out on Sinking Creek Road. We had a bridge that was completely washed out last night on Sinking Creek Road that will need to be replaced. Excuse me. There's also a bridge out in Washington County that got completely washed out. So if, as I understand it, if we incur damages in excess of $475,000 for the county and the governor declares a state of emergency, we would be eligible for reimbursement from FEMA. So, looking at what happened in Hamilton County, Bradley County, down around the Chattanooga area last night, I think that there's probably a pretty high probability of a declaration of an emergency, at least across Tennessee, East Tennessee, if not the entire state. So hopefully we can have the opportunity to get some reimbursements on the cost of replacing some of those bridges that got damaged.
Pete, is that bridge on Sinking Creek? You had mentioned a few weeks ago that we were going to have to replace one. Is that the bridge that got washed out?
I'm not sure, Mayor. I'll have to check and see.
Okay.
I'll check and see.
You had talked about David Miller when you briefed us before, and that's kind of
Right.
where this is.
Okay, I'll check on it and let you know.
That'd be good if it was.
High waters, anytime we have high waters, we've got some challenges with the wastewater system. We've got a couple of pump stations that are surrounded by water or have water up on the sides of them. We lost a couple of water service laterals up on Sinking Creek. And there's 2 or 3 other areas where we had some mudslides that took out some water lines. So the guys have been busy today restoring water service to some folks that had their water lines washed out. The high water evidently came up pretty quick last night, and by daylight, the majority of it had dissipated. I know Andy Harmon sent me some pictures this morning of water of Lake Harmon beside his property. And I noticed when I came through there today about 1:30 that most of that water had drained out and all that was gone. So the way it looks right now, I don't know that we had any significant damage downtown that I'm aware of. And most of the standing water is beginning to recede and drain off. And I'm sure the power board, Bright Ridge, excuse me, Jeff, has had their hands full today with down trees and high winds and trying to keep the power on everywhere. When the power goes off, that also presents us some challenges at the pump stations if we don't have a standby generator at that particular location. But Bright Ridge is always very good about getting power back to our pump stations very quickly. So we're still assessing damages, don't know the entire extent of it, but we should have a pretty good report by the end of the day tomorrow. At this point, I know there were some houses got water up in the houses. Phil was working on those this afternoon, checking those out. But structural damage, other than a couple of places where the edge of the road washed out and the one bridge washing out, I don't know that we received a whole lot of damage beyond that. We've been very blessed with being proactive with our stormwater management to this point, and events like this are probably just a good reminder that we're not through with our work there, but so there's more to do.
The bridge on Sinking Creek didn't shut down Sinking Creek. It was a bridge that went over to some private property that crossed the creek. Isn't that correct?
I believe that's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So Sinking Creek is still passable after the water receded, but I think it was flooded pretty good.
Sinking Creek Road out on the county end, I think received some damage to the road. Yeah. So I haven't been out there today. I don't know if that road is passable or not, Mayor. Phil did say that the road did get some damage out there.
Okay.
So if you're out driving, be careful. If you see water in the road, back up. Don't drive through it. No need being foolish. As far as operations go, we can continue to operate with an adjusted point of delivery in a lot of locations. More folks are using the drive-through window out at Gray for payments and inquiries for water service, those types of things. We still have a number of people choosing to do business with us electronically. That's working out real well. Police department, fire department are holding up real well. We were able to get some more masks. We'll be receiving those tomorrow. So they'll be in good shape on masks for a while. Mr. Wheely out at EMS was kind enough to work with us to get a supplier to get us masks. Excuse me. So we feel good about where we are with all of our operations. we're not having any problems with water sewer. We're in a very stable point there. We've got plenty of chemicals on hand, and we're continuing to maintain the system as normal. So, we're pretty much business as usual. We've got we got more than 50 or 60 people continuing to work from home, which seems to be working out pretty good. Work is getting done. We've got the equipment and the processes worked out to allow people to work from home. So that's worked out well for us as well. Bristol, Kingsport, Elizabethton, Greenville, and I continue to have a daily conference call to see what's going on in each other's communities, how we can be of help to each other, lessons learned, best practices, those types of things. I usually talk to Mayor Grandy about every day. Rusty Sells and I, our EMA director, we usually talk 2 or 3 times a day. So there's still a lot of information exchange going on, and I think we've been able to adapt rather quickly to the changing environment we've been presented with, and really unaware of any real significant challenges or problems that we've had. I am glad to report that we've got a group of people consisting of JCDA, the Chamber, NetRep, some of our folks, making phone calls to local businesses to what they're doing to see if they need any help with anything, sharing information with them. Also, for those essential businesses that remain open, trying to talk with them to ensure they're in compliance with the CDC guidelines. And in addition to that, of course, we've got our public health officer and the codes enforcement group that continue to answer questions and make site visits to locations that have questions or that we've gotten calls about. So that seems to all be going well. We've got a treasure trunk of information on our COVID-19 page on our website that'll get you a link to about anything from A to Z. There's also an email address there to where you can send your questions or comments to, and we've got a couple of folks that are continually monitoring those and responding. We've got a person designated to answer phone calls that come in. And to this point, I think we've been able to get questions turned around in a very short amount of time. And everybody seems to continue to be in a reasonably good state of self-compliance. As I've said to you all before, I think the real challenge is going to be coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks as we get further into this with people remaining self-compliant with the stay-at-home order and the social distancing requirements, those types of things. And in case you haven't seen or heard the news today, Governor Lee did extend the statewide stay-at-home order through April the 30th. And he is going to make an announcement on Wednesday as to whether or not they will be continuing the school year after April 30th, or if they will discontinue school for the balance of this school year. So I'm sure everybody's anxious to hear what the state's direction on the remainder of the school year will be.
Can you repeat when that update was anticipated?
Which, I'm sorry.
With respect to whether schools, what the plans were beyond April 30th.
I was told that information would be revealed in a press conference on Wednesday.
Thank you.
So we should know something in the middle of the week. And I don't know. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have our latest numbers
The latest
through
numbers,
the health department?
what I saw this afternoon, the updated numbers, Washington County and Sullivan County both have 42 confirmed cases. Washington County has done 540 some tests with 42 positive test results. And there were 23 of those 42, I believe, were reported as being recovered. So that's good news in terms of the numbers are still manageable. They do continue to rise. And, the analogy I've used with several people lately is we're running a 100-yard dash with this thing and we're about at the 80-yard mark. There's been way too many sacrifices, both financially and personally, to abandon the race at this point. I think if we can stick with the plan and stick with what we've got going right now for another 2 or 3 weeks, then hopefully we're into a position that we're manageable and that we've got enough data to where we know that whatever decision we make is used on good science rather than just an intuition or a best guess. I haven't confirmed this, but I was told like the end of last week that the governor was requesting that the state of Tennessee begin doing 10,000 tests a day, which I think what we were going to be responsible for was about 500 a day. And as I understood it, it was pretty much a random testings to determine if there were asymptomatic people that were actually carriers or not, and if so, to what degree are they distributed throughout the community, and to determine how many actual positive cases there are out there that may not have been tested yet. I think if we can get that kind of information, we have a much better data set with which to make decisions on what direction we go and at what point in time we do change directions.
Pete, do you know for sure if tests that are done at someone's doctor's office or through ballot are rolling into those public health numbers?
I cannot give you an absolute answer to that. It's my understanding that any test done in the state will be reported back through the state Department of Health. Commissioner Calhoun may have a little better insight to that than I.
That's what I understand, but that's just hearsay on exactly how those get reported back. I think everybody assumes that they're going to go through the health department.
I know there are several different entities in town doing tests. I know Washington County Health Department's doing testing, Ballard's doing testing, and from what I heard last week, they were asking that we stand up 2 more additional testing sites here in Washington County. So in order to get those 500 a day done, but I'll need to dig a little deeper into the specifics on that.
Yeah.
And let you know as soon as I find something.
Yeah, I saw where A.O. Smith is reporting one, and they're closing for 2 days, I think, to thoroughly clean the plant.
Yes, I had heard that late this afternoon. I haven't had a chance to confirm it, but I'd heard that they weren't going to shut the entire plant down for a few days until they could get it cleaned and get back up and running again. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So we still need to be careful.
Let me share a phone call I got this afternoon from Andy Dietrich. Some of you may have heard this already. I had not. But he's kind of pulled a group of people together in the region, a lot of business owners and bankers and folks like that. John, I don't know if he's contacted you yet or not, but they are putting together a coalition to try to help small businesses. And they're going to do a big fundraiser, hoping they can get some folks to invest here to help our small businesses get back on their feet. This is aside from any federal help that's coming down the pike. So if they're getting ready to go out with some advertisement. They'll be on TV where they're interviewing some small business owners and just to tell their story of what they're going through. Anyway, be on the lookout for that. and don't know exactly how it's going to work and who gets, how they get selected to receive funds. I did hear from a small business owner today about the complexity of the PPP application process, and then, that they applied, and then when all the information they gave during the application process, by the time they heard back from the bank, the process had changed. And so there was a list of 300 questions that were being asked. I don't know if they were exaggerating or what, but they were less than thrilled with that particular program. So I don't know if anybody else has been in touch, or John, you're probably more likely than anybody to know how our small businesses are responding and able to get through to apply.
But like everything else with COVID, it changes rapidly, and it's hard to stay in front of it. But I hadn't heard that actually, that they had changed the process. Everybody I've talked to this point, one of the biggest problems was finding out which lenders were participating,
Yeah, right.
and how to get through it. But the original process, I looked at the application. It seemed pretty simple and
Yeah.
straightforward.
Right. Well, Andy did share with me too, they had applied early and had already received their funds at the
Right.
Chevrolet. So I think he was happy with it. Anybody else have anything else you want to share? All right. If there's nothing, then I guess we will close the meeting and see everybody on Thursday.
Thank you.
Have a great few days.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.